This week, we've got questions on the Heresy of Modernism, the Eastern Church versus the Western Church, and Charles gives us an idiot's guide to monarchist apologetics. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with an ochlocratic Charles Coulombe.
Ochlocratic?
Yeah.
Really? Favoring rule by the mob?
That's not so bad, is it?
Well, no. I mean, that kind of opinion got me a job with your great uncle. I mean, never mind. Let me rephrase what I meant. What I meant is, ever since you went legit, no. Well, you know, like your great uncle
ever since we diversified.
Diversified. That's it. But I mean, your great uncle used to say, them as pays the money makes the laws.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, what do you say to that? But at any rate, never you mind, because this is the beginning of the second week in December. It's actually the Feast of St. Ambrose, believe it or not, that we're doing this on.
Oh. You get your throat blessed?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's St. Blaise.
Oh, Blaise. Oh, I'm sorry. I mix those
that's
up all
the time. That's in February. You're going to start making up customs for the church.
Are they going to start blessing the animals? Are you going to bless? Did they bless the animals?
Yeah, for St. Ambrose. Why are they blessing the animals on St. Ambrose Day? Oh, gosh. Why aren't they blessing the Christmas tree ornaments? They always do on St. Ambrose Day. The blessing of the ornaments. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, demand of your pastor. You go to the church with your box of Christmas ornaments and demand that he bless them because it's St. Ambrose's Day. Yeah, okay, great. Making up entirely new customs. This commemorates St. Ambrose buying ornaments in Milan.
Well, doesn't that start somewhere, though? I mean, somebody must have started the St. Blaise thing, right?
Yeah, but St. Blaise had a connection to curing throat disease. I mean, St. Ambrose and Christmas ornaments just doesn't count.
I mean, well, how about St. Joseph? I mean, Italian pastries?
That's March 19th. Yeah, but, he's not going to do anything for Christmas in March.
I know, but...
We have St. Joseph's tables. Oh, that's it. Why don't we do St. Ambrose tables?
St. Ambrose. That's fine by me, as long as there's tasty food or something like that. Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
There's not an end to it, the St. Ambrose water.
No.
The blessing of the water on St. Ambrose Day. The blessing of the pigeons.
Ooh.
Yeah, every December 7th, the urban pigeons are taken down from the skyscrapers and brought to the church to be blessed, and then released again.
Wow, that sounds quite an endeavor.
It does. That's probably,
okay.
It's probably why the custom never started.
Yeah. Okay. How's it going over there? Going through any customs right now?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, St. Nicholas visited me. I'm glad you asked that last night, or the night before last. No, last night. St. Nicholas visited me with a crowd of singers. And because they were visiting me, they then visited the Turkish family next door, who had no idea what was going on, but were very happy to be sung to and to be handed candies. So that was interesting, and that was great. I left my shoes out the night before, but he didn't put anything in them. But he did come to visit me, so that was something. And today we went off to beautiful Bratislava, home of the carpet bathtub routine, and saw the Nutcracker, which I had never seen before.
Like
and it was
people
wonderful.
dancing, like people actually dancing.
Yeah, it was the ballet. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
it was really great, really, really great. And of course, there were the Advent markets all over here, and in Bratislava, and people selling glühwein and Christmas ornaments, and it was really wonderful.
I think of all the culture over there, the one thing that I really want to experience is sort of the small town Christmas markets.
Yeah,
You know?
Well, we have them here in Trumau, sure.
Yeah, I've always wanted to experience one of those. I mean, you see it portrayed, and it just looks so idyllic.
Well, it is, and they really love them. I mean, they go in for them in a big way. Here, Czechia, Hungary, Germany, Central Europe really, really throw themselves into it, and both Catholic and Protestant areas too. So what you should probably do is come over here next Advent.
I would love that. I mean, the closest I could get to something like that, we actually last weekend went to Solvang, and
yes, I saw the pictures.
That's a cute little. I mean, that's the best in terms of quaint. I feel like that California can afford. Danish have an interesting culture. Yeah.
They do, and every September for the past 4 years, I've gone up to Denmark for the Latin Mass men's retreat. But I've also done every time I've done a bit of exploring of various elements of Denmark, and it's a lovely country. And as you remember, this past time we offered Mass for the first time an 800-year-old formerly Catholic church. Trinity Mass offered for the first time at that altar in 400 years.
That's
500
incredible.
years. Yeah. So the mother continent may be a messy place, and the faith may be in jeopardy, and everything may be sort of broken to bits, but there's still so much of it,
Mm.
And I do love being over here, but I am coming back a week from tomorrow. I'll be leaving on a jet plane. I know when I'll be back again. I shall arrive. And so next week will be our last episode using this facility for over a month, and thus into the new year.
So, yeah. So, I feel like whenever you announce your return is very strategic because you don't always announce, but it's like, okay, I'm here. If you take me out to a restaurant, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
No, it wouldn't. I wouldn't fight you. And you know what else it means?
What?
It means in 2 weeks' time, before I come into the studio, I will stop at Peacock Donuts.
Right.
And you know what'll happen then?
Donuts will be eaten.
I will buy 4 glazed donuts, 2 for thee and 2 for me. What do you say to that, boss, huh?
I await with bated breath.
It's a donut of desire.
A donut of desire?
Yes, covered with delicious glazed stuff.
Excellent.
But it's the other thing to bear in mind is that while today is St. Ambrose, tomorrow is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. Although in the new rite, they push it off until the 9th. So anyway, whether you celebrate it on the 8th or the 9th, bear in mind that it is the patronal feast of these United States. So be patriotic. Love your country. Pray for its conversion. My country 'tis of the land of Freemasonry, all the rest of it.
I always remember every time Immaculate Conception rolls around now, I always remember a question from a fan who he had a question for you, which is like, he says, so should the Feast of Immaculate Conception be our 4th of July? Should we be setting off fireworks? Should we be patriotic in this manner? Yeah?
I think so. I think so. And in keeping with the patriotic theme, You know what you probably did not do this year? You celebrated Thanksgiving, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that last weekend. But I know what you didn't do. You didn't read the Thanksgiving Proclamation 2024. Are you ready?
I didn't read that. Okay.
Here it is. All right. A proclamation on Thanksgiving Day, 2024. This Thanksgiving, as families, friends, and loved ones gather in gratitude, may we all celebrate the many blessings of our great nation. Thanksgiving is at the heart of America's spirit of gratitude, of finding light in times of both joy and strife. The Pilgrims celebrated the first Thanksgiving to honor a successful harvest, made possible by the generosity and kindness of the Wampanoag people. On the way to Valley Forge, as George Washington and his troops continued the fierce struggle for our nation's independence, they found a moment for Thanksgiving. And amid the fight to preserve our Union during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln established Thanksgiving as a national holiday, finding gratitude in the courage of the American people who sacrificed so much for our country. We are a good nation because we are a good people. The First Lady and I remain inspired by the everyday Americans who lift this country up and push us forward. Today, so many among their family and friends celebrating the love that binds them and creating new traditions that will carry on for generations. To anyone with an empty seat at the dinner table grieving the loss of a loved one, the First Lady and I hold you in our hearts and prayers. America is a nation of promise and possibilities, and that is because every day ordinary Americans are doing extraordinary things. Our service members and veterans have given all, risked all, and dared all to keep our nation free. Our first responders, firefighters, and police officers risk their lives every day to keep the rest of us safe. I can see the best of America in them and in our workers and union leaders, public servants and teachers, doctors and scientists, and all who give their heart and soul to ensuring people are treated with dignity and respect. And I find hope in our nation's families who sacrifice so much to achieve the American dream and build a future worthy of our highest aspirations. This Thanksgiving, the last one I will declare as president, I express my gratitude to the American people. Serving as president has been the honor of a lifetime. America is the greatest country on earth, and there is so much to be grateful for. May we celebrate all that unites us, because there is nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. Now, therefore, I, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim Thursday, November 28, 2024, as a National Day of Thanksgiving. I encourage the people of the United States of America to join together and give thanks for the friends, neighbors, family members, and communities who supported each other over the past year in a reflection of goodwill and unity. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 27th day of November in the year of our Lord 2024, and of the independence of the United States of America of the 249th. Joseph R. Biden, Jr., God save the King.
No, he didn't. No, he did not say that. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. That's a fabrication. This goes back to last year when you said that, and I took you to task, and it was a fabrication.
Why did you take me to task?
Because I knew it was a fabrication. There's no way he said that. You're saying it's implied. It's a verbal statement.
Yeah. It's like most statements. It's implied. The very fact that it's a proclamation implies that it's to be ended with God save the King. Doesn't matter who makes it. It could be the Secretary General of the UN. It should then end, I, so-and-so, Secretary General of the United Nations, God save the King.
That was a really formal... Oh, yeah, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you got to admit, it makes a nice ending.
It is a nice ending. I like the formality of the proclamation. I actually wasn't able to place it. before you said the name, it kind of jumped out at to me because I almost thought, is that FDR? Is that Eisenhower? Who's saying that?
No, all presidential proclamations sound sort of like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this one was, we're a good nation because we're good people.
I knew that struck in your craw. Because you had cited someone else saying that, and I knew that bothered you a lot, which is also why I was going to guess FDR said that.
Well, it's Bush Jr.
Oh, that's right.
Remember, they hate us because we're good. Well, maybe not.
That's right. Well, that's nice. I feel happy for. I like all the memes on the internet about President Biden. There's so many fun ones where one of my favorite ones is he summoned the army of the dead for those votes in 2020, and then the meme is I hold your oaths fulfilled. And they didn't come, for to vote for the Democratic Party this one because.
No, because they did it in 2020.
I just love
your
that
oaths
one.
are fulfilled. Yeah, I like that. Your oaths are fulfilled.
Oh.
Then he comes back 4 years later. I summon you, army of the dead.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing there. It's a good thing Aragorn didn't have to make a second descent on Gondor.
All right. Oh, by the way, actually, now that you got me thinking of Lord of the Rings, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to mention it just as a talking point. You know they're going to do anime for Lord of the Rings. I think it's called the War of the Rohirrim. Anime.
Great.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Well, it just shows you now that Christopher Tolkien is gone. It's, the old Do-Re-Mi.
That's unbelievable. Directed by Kenji Kamiyama.
I'll bet.
So,
I saw this, yeah.
Yeah, so, man, yeah, I guess if there's a lot of money to be had, regardless of anything, I guess, okay, let's do it. All right, speaking of money, thank you to all the patrons who have supported us over the years. Thank you so much. We wouldn't be doing this without you, or we couldn't do this without you. If you'd like to become a patron, sign up for as little as $5 a month. Get access to the pre-show. This particular pre-show was so good. Charles was so on fire that I actually probably am just gonna do a public release because I don't. It hurts me to put that behind a paywall. But usually you get 30
Christmas gift.
Like a Christmas gift, exactly. Usually you get 30 to 40 minutes extra content a week. A lot of you guys are asking questions who aren't patrons. Right now we're pretty much mostly asking questions from patrons unless it's an extraordinary item. So if you want your questions asked, become a patron. That's the way to do it. All right.
Speaking of questions.
Yeah. Yes, questions. Let's see here. Oh, okay. We have a pretty serious question to start off. So he says, he or she says, question for Charles from a longtime listener. I am wondering if there is a process for removing and or replacing a godparent. When my children were younger, I did not take this responsibility as seriously as I should have and caved into family pressure of who I should choose as godparents. Long story short, my son's godfather, who was an atheist at the time of the baptism, has now become a transsexual. Whatever mistakes I have made in the past, I want to do right by my children now and give them solid Catholic godparents who will protect and nurture their souls. Is there a formal process for making this change, and can it even be done at all?
No. In short, you can't really. All you can do is, and I've done this for several people, is just kind of appoint honorary godparents. And this should be somebody your kids know and like, who's really got the faith, and who's fond of your children. and could be relied on, A, if anything happened to you, to try to keep the connection to the faith, and B, if they're sufficiently well-moneyed, you wouldn't mind seeing them looking after your kids, in case of your demise. But there's no the godparents are enshrined in canon law, and there's no real way to replace them. Except, they die, and that's it. You don't have them anymore, just like your normal parents.
Yeah. Before the show, when we were prepping, you had said, I thought it was very poignant. You said it's like taking back witnesses to a wedding, to a marriage. It's locked in stone.
It's like you realize your best man turned tranny. Well, okay, but you can't undo the fact that he was your best man.
All right. Nate says, I have a lot of questions that go to this young adult group. I have thought of what I would say if the topic of monarchy or monarchism came up. Since I am a monarchist myself, what would I say if one of my good Catholic friends verbally attacked or challenged me regarding this subject? I thought I'd ask Charles and Vincent if you have, quote, an idiot's guide to monarchist apologetics, end quote, planned in your head that you could share with all of us. Thanks and Godspeed.
Well, the first is most obvious, and that is, it's not Christ the President. Secondly, you've got X number of Catholic saints who were kings and queens. What republic has produced anything like that? Oh yeah, none. And if you're going to start yapping about freedom, well, we learned what freedom was about in the modern world by COVID. No great monarch of the past could have tucked his people away for 2 years. They didn't have that power. They didn't have the power to change the meaning of a human being, which is why they couldn't bring in abortion. They couldn't change the marriage laws, which is why they couldn't have brought in gay marriage. They couldn't have brought in euthanasia. See, only free politicians who have absolute power over their little sheeple subjects, only they can do that. And you already accept that. You've already accepted being a wholly owned subsidiary of your masters. So don't yap about, oh, gee willikers, the old monarchies were so, they were absolute. Stop. You already enjoy absolute rule. You live under it. You enjoy it. You pay for it.
I have one of the persons that really between Charles and Solange Hertz, these two provided really all the arguments for monarchy that really convinced me. I'll give you three arguments that are pretty savage from Solange Hertz.
She could be me.
She's absolutely vicious. The first act of democracy was Adam and Eve.
Yep.
They voted and God lost.
That's right. Adam, Eve, and the serpent, 3-1.
Democracy was also involved in the redemption, in a certain sense. They voted to crucify him. That was put to a vote.
Give us Barabbas. Yeah, it was. Give us Barabbas. Will of the people.
The will of the people. But the other thing that sort of is a logical statement that rings true is democracy flips authority on its head. It totally flips it around. The people do not have the authority. That's just, and she actually likens it to Satan, because Satan loves to reverse things so perfectly. He's like, oh, okay, let's completely change that to make it the opposite of what it is. Let's make it. Let's favor the revolutions right? Let's be a fan of the people, right?
Well, let's not forget that the first revolution and the first revolutionary was that of Satan.
Oh, of course.
And the thing is that revolutions never end well. They're nasty, bloody affairs while they're going on. You could say the American Revolution ended well. Well, not initially, it didn't. And the argument can be made that the jury's still out as to how well our country is doing under this form of government.
So, I mean, I know Charles has had this type of discussion probably several times. I've had this discussion several times. It's actually quite boring a lot of the time because people say the same stupid crap, and then
over and over again.
So
and they always say it as though they were the first one. Well, what if you had a king who wasn't any good and you couldn't get rid of him? It would depend in what way he wasn't any good. And again, you're far likelier to have a bad president than a bad king, statistically. But wait a minute. But at least you could vote a president out, yeah, and replace him with what? Another politician.
Yeah, and when you get them down, when you really grind them down, in my experience, what's left is sort of this bleak fatalism where we just, I know things aren't good, but we just simply can't do better than what we have. And then that's it. And then it ends there, and then that's it.
We can't do better than what we have. Perhaps, and maybe this is what we deserve to have. There is that possibility, but I would like to think that something better is in our grasp, something better is achievable. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, and obviously it won't happen in the United States anytime soon.
Well, and this is where Christophe Buffon de Chazal comes in Tumblr House published book, The End of Democracy, where he says, there's so much progressive thought. We're always trying to reach and attain perfection, and it keeps going on and on. How is it that we've decided that we can do no better than democracy? Is democracy the pinnacle of perfection?
The answer is apparently yes.
Isn't it funny, though, how we're always trying for better? Except there.
Well, except there. And there we accept, a mediocrity that doesn't slaughter us is the best we can hope for. And anyway, you'll be happy to know that Ossiusti Press, run by Peter Kwasniewski, this coming year is bringing out a book of mine to be called The Complete Monarchist, Compleat.
I do have to say, as I survey the landscape, the Catholic landscape between when we started this podcast, 2016, and now, I do have to say, Charles, I feel like I see your influence on a lot of Catholic intellectuals. It's like I feel like you're the band that it's like all the other rock bands cite. It's like the Clash or something, where it's like you weren't a big band, but it's like you influence all the bands. I feel like that's
Only Hearts Club.
I feel like that's you. You're that of the Catholic intellectuals. Like you're still, it's still kind of underground, etc. But your influence is wide ranging because the people, the big time people, they look at you.
And are frightened. Well, what can I tell you, ladies and gentlemen? I've never had any desire to start a movement or, have a ton of disciples or anything like that. What my hope has always been is twofold. One, to get people to accept the Catholic faith, and two, to think for themselves, to draw conclusions based on the knowledge of the faith, knowledge of history, etc. And to that end, I've done my best to, get those sorts of knowledges out there. On the one hand, I'd be lying if I didn't say that every time someone writes me or whatever and says, Mr. Coulombe, you've been a great help in my personal development and all that, is slightly embarrassing, frankly, but it's also gratifying, obviously. But I'm not ecstatic about it all, because I know a large part of the reason why the ideas that I espouse are beginning to look more and more reasonable is because the system under which I was born is falling to pieces. And that doesn't make me happy, even though I know intellectually that it almost had to go this way. Even though I know that, it's the only system I've lived under.
So, we have to move on due to time constraints, but I'm going to say that we didn't even...
Nothing to see here.
We didn't even
Nothing
really
to
touch the surface. We kind of attacked democracy more than perhaps promoted monarchy, but I can remember just offhand some of Charles's points in terms of pro-monarchy. One of the biggest is monarchy is very personal. It's a personal form of government. When, for example, in Star Spangled Crown, when the king's son is killed, that's personal, because he served in the armed forces, and so that's one example. That they're trained to rule, that they have an active interest in keeping the family business afloat, rather than just simply go nuts with the credit card, right?
Yeah, and of course too, they're trained to look at the subjects as their children.
They have to rule everyone, not just their party, too.
No, and that, oddly enough, that's part of the Achilles heel of trying to restore them, because obviously, in the beginning, those who want to restore them are a particular party. But inevitably, they aspire to be the king for all their people, not just the people who are now monarchists, but everybody. And so there's an inherent problem for them there, which is why in the modern setup, restorations have been so difficult. Another problem, of course, is that anyone who would be a strong man, I have a choice. I'm like Franco, I'm like Putin, I'm like de Gaulle. I now have complete power over my country. Now I can bring back the monarchy, or I can rule as strongman. Unfortunately, the kind of man who's likely to be able to make himself ruler is exactly the last kind of person who would voluntarily make way for this person who did what to get in there. It's very, very difficult to do. It would require the sort of humility that George Washington had when he gave up control of the army and went back to Mount Vernon. And speaking of monarchs, you remember what George III said about that?
I do.
He said, if this be true, that General Washington is the greatest man of the age. That's how rare the military leader, the strong man, giving up power voluntarily really is.
All right. But for those of you who want more monarchist apologetics, we have a playlist of all these sorts of segments. It's got to be several hours worth of content on this. So just head over there, and Charles will be talking for hours on this particular topic. All right.
Knock yourself out.
All right, we've got a question from Tampa Tobacconist who says, will Charles please define the heresy of modernism and explain the historical context of its development? Ooh.
Very good. Well, modernism is the heresy that basically says there are no fixed truths, no fixed religious truths for the Catholic, but that rather every age develops its own religious understanding, and the Church has to update its teaching to match the new views of the age. So these ideas were actually developed in the late 19th century as the Church faced things like first Darwin and then Freud and the horrors of the Great Wars and so on. The idea was that, well, empirical science has proven the Bible wrong. We have medicine, we don't need exorcisms. We have this, we don't need that, etc. So the Church has to come into the modern age, and to do so, it has to accept the fact that truth changes. It's not frozen, and that is modernism. It was condemned by Pope St. Pius X, and from his day until Paul VI got rid of it, every priest when he was ordained had to take the oath against modernism.
We have medicine. We don't need exorcisms. Who said that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the kind of attitude. You know, we have psychiatrists who need exorcisms. Demons and angels and all that are elements of ourselves or our personalities or whatever it is. They're not real.
Okay. Vonday Radio has a question for you. He says, Dear Charles, in 1939, Winston Churchill said, quote, the overthrow of the monarchy in Germany was our greatest political mistake, end quote. Please can you reflect on the counterfactual if that terrible villain Woodrow Wilson had not insisted on the end of the German monarchy? How might 20th century history have been different?
Well, very. And for one thing, too, the full quote, because Churchill said this several times, was not just the Hohenzollerns in Germany, and the Wittelsbachs and so on, but also the Habsburgs in Austria-Hungary. So if somehow the dynasties had maintained the rule of Central Europe in a somewhat chastened, because perhaps defeated form, but still there, a lot of things might have been quite different. On the one hand, Emperor Karl would have had the chance to try to federate the empire, and they would not. The nationalities question, I think, would have been somewhat assuaged, but you wouldn't have had the Soviet Union in a really in a position to expand into Poland and all that, as it ended up doing. And probably both the Germans and the Austrians would have worked very hard for the eventual overthrow of the communists. Well, and in fact, they would have undoubtedly intervened much more heavily in the Russian Civil War. So the communists might not even have come to power.
Wow.
And that would also have meant probably Europe becoming allied, becoming a separate entity. It might have happened sooner. In other words, we in the United States might not have been in a position to take over world dominance. It would quite possibly have been beyond us. So I think that was possibly part of why Wilson did what he did. Is part of remaking the world in our image, and it never worked before. It's not going to work now.
All right. Nate has a fairly heated question.
Okay.
He says he has a question regarding one of his biggest pet peeves in the church, and really Christianity as a whole. Why do we refer to the land church as the Western Church and the Byzantine Church and all the rites in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia as the Eastern Church? I've always found these phrases incredibly imprecise and misleading for many reasons. The main one being it lumps a bunch of traditions and peoples together that are very different from one another in Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. Another reason is that it gives credence to the myth that the Roman Rite is the only liturgical rite or tradition in the West, which we know is not historically true. Also, most Catholics in Asia celebrate the Roman Rite. Does that make them culturally a part of the Western Church? My question is, what kind of idiotic historian came up with these absurd generalizations? And how can we correct this modern error in catechesis?
Well, okay. First, you've got to bear in mind that the descriptions come from the division of the Roman Empire after Theodosius the Great. The Eastern Christian churches all derive their origins from one place or another in the Eastern Empire. The Latin rites, so-called, the Western rites, all derive them from the Western Empire. As far as the Asian countries, China, Korea, Japan, etc., are concerned, their faith amongst their Catholics is much more Western than it is Eastern. It's just the way it is. They were evangelized by French, German, and Italian missionaries, and Spanish and Portuguese, and they're Western in terms of liturgy. In terms of psychology, of course, they're very different. Their culture is very different. West is, Portugal or Italy.
All right. We have one last question.
Okay, I'm ready.
This is from a non-patron. This is a very special question, and this is sort of part 2 of a question that was asked several months ago. If you all will remember, question from an elderly gentleman who is an old Catholic and an old Catholic, as in the Old Catholic Church, who is considering coming in. And he says now, his name is Dale. He says, "Okay, Charles, I took your advice, which coincided with what I already felt was right. And now I am a candidate for admission to the church. My next question is, what hope do you have for the church's recovery from the liturgical catastrophe of Vatican II?"
The answer is lots, because I already saw it. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that my personal experience goes back to the immediate aftermath of Vatican II. I saw everything destroyed. And then bit by bit, piece by piece, it began to rebuild. And that movement began to really catch fire under John Paul II. Benedict fanned it into a flame with Summorum Pontificum. And it was going along swimmingly until a few years ago, when the current Holy Father jumped on it with all 4 feet. Well, he's going to die, and all of the creatures around him, who were roughly the same age, they're all going to die. And young people will carry on the fight. And again, we will remake the progress we've lost in the past 15 years, and it will continue to build up the church. And I think that's what it's going to be in the next 15, 20, 30 years. People won't be seeing about we're building up the traditional movement. They're just building up the church. And that will mean re-traditionalizing people, places, and things. So to answer your question, a huge amount of hope.
Okay, just to belabor the question a little bit. So I think there's a fear that I've heard expressed that there's a self-reinforcing liberal current in the hierarchy.
Yeah,
I just browsing. I don't know. Some people say there's a parallel church. I don't know if I
no,
heard Mel Gibson say that or somebody said that.
possibly. And don't you believe it? There are 4 creeds, and whoever's Catholic believes them, whoever doesn't isn't. All right. The church has been through all sorts of guff before and come through it when the perpetrators have gone to their rewards. And, she springs back in time for the next disaster.
Okay, so you're saying we're going to be unstuck. We're not stuck in this, and the liberal people are going to promote more liberal people, and it's going to be this weird cycle that's very
for a
niche.
while.
Oh, for a while. Okay.
For a while, but it won't last because there's nothing to it. There's no. See, these people are parasitic. They can't build anything. They can't make anything. They just survive off what they can suck off of everyone else. No, I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, what I always remember when it comes to anything, talking about anything, problems in the church. I always remember Father Ripper's advice. He says, you have to free yourself of attachments to things. If something's dragging you down, you've got to get away from it. And if you have an attachment to the concept of a perfectly holy church filled with holy people, if you're attached to that, if that's making you angry every day, if you're frustrated every day because of this,
absolutely,
you have to get away from this. This is your cross. This is the obstacle that God is saying you need to overcome, mentally for yourself. So that's for all of us, 100%.
Too true.
Our hope is hope in heaven. We don't want to be like the charismatics, right? Where it's like we're hoping for a worldly outcome.
And we may get one, but it's not what we can expect.
Yeah. All right. Closing thoughts, Charles?
Yes. Christmas is coming. The geese are getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you had a penny, a halfpenny'll do. If you had a halfpenny, God bless you. And, well, I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents under the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, Vinny, if only in my dreams. Except I will be home for Christmas this year.
We can accommodate all those things other than the snow.
Yeah. That we'll have to do that. Unless you run up to Big Bear or something.
Do you get snow over there in Austria where you guys are?
Oh, yeah. We actually had our first snow today.
Wow.
It didn't stick, but.
I'm jealous of that. Of all the things, as a Californian, I really am jealous of snowy Christmases. I've only had one in my life. And that was really special. Actually, I had to do some work in Park City, which is north of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I did it over in the Christmas season. That was a very special situation. That was good. So, all right. I have a question for you. What is it if it's Monday?
It is off the menu.
What about the soul you save?
It may be your own. And remember, operators are standing by.